Just like we planned it.
Yes, exactly. Lots of rehearsing went into that. So. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 3, and we have a name now.
We have a name. What is our podcast called?
It is the Guitar Lab Podcast.
Guitar Lab Podcast.
It is. So we felt that kind of encapsulated what we were aiming to do, to elevate guitar players and to kind of share our expertise and get to the nitty gritty. You don't need to buy more gear to sound better.
Wait.
No.
What?
Yep.
What?
Another pedal will not make you sound better.
What?
I know.
No, but it has the notes built in.
I'm sorry.
I bought this guitar because it came with these notes.
No, that's a Phrygian guitar. So.
No wonder we played that last chord.
Yeah. You were in Dorian, silly goat. All right, so we're just gonna talk a little bit about things that can elevate anyone's guitar playing, but specifically intermediate guitar playing, and we're gonna focus on 3 things today.
Yeah.
One of them is gonna be things that people will struggle with. Is number 1 is limited guitar vocabulary, or ways to extend basic chords to make them more
specifically,
unique.
Right? Yeah.
Second is breaking out of the pentatonic box. The number 1 pentatonic box that you can literally kill yourself with.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It needs to be tamed because
it sounds amazing, and we know that a lot of the greats played it, but we're going to get out of it today.
Exactly. And by get out of it, I mean, we're just talking about stretching the bounds just a little bit.
Yeah.
We're not going to be in some avant-garde.
Yeah, no.
we're stuff like that.
I mean, look, I think the pentatonic scale itself is just the most incredible thing.
Right. It's very, very cool. And then we're also going to talk about rhythm. Yes. And you have some very specific thoughts on rhythm and backing tracks. And so at that point, I'm going to be more of a student than anything. I'm really excited to hear what you've got to say.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Let's dig in. So chord vocabulary, expanding it.
All right. So most people, when they learn the guitar, they learn traditional major and minor chords first. For instance,
cowboy chords, as some people say.
Campfire tunes. And there's nothing wrong with these chords at all. But occasionally you might want to just break out of that a little bit. So one of the things that I would recommend is to learn your 7s. All right. So your major and your minor 7s. And there is a diminished 7, which I'm not planning on getting into that right now.
Yeah, we don't need that for today, right?
So long story short, in a traditional key, there's 7 notes, and you can build a chord off each one of those notes. 3 of them are major, 3 of them are minor. So the 1, 4, and the 5 are major, 2, 3, and 6 are minor. That's just basic chord theory. And so if we take that approach, we could take a G major chord, which everyone loves that. It's great.
So good.
But when we want to add maybe the 7th, so instead of a triad chord that contains a root, a third, and a fifth, we're now going to add the 7th note on that. You can hear that really mellow, jazzy kind of flavor.
So pretty. It seems like it's raining outside all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's totally different, even though it contains all the notes of this.
Yeah. 1 note change, that's all it is.
Right.
1 additional note.
And then if we continue that, so the 2 chord, it would be an A minor. So everyone knows that chord. Very sad. It's still raining. And what we could do is you could do a minor 7.
Totally.
You could do a minor 9.
Ooh, nice.
Or my personal favorite, minor 11s.
Ooh, yeah, got it.
And that's the chord that I was playing in the vamp as we started, and it's just so silky and warm. It's really awesome, and that's something that you're never going to get from.
Totally, yeah.
And again, there's nothing wrong with that chord. So
triads are great too. Yeah, and if you want to know what that chord is, especially if you're on the podcast audio only side, that's going to be from the thickest string 5X 553X.
Right.
That's an A minor 11 chord.
Right. And the cool thing about the position that you just called out is that it's a closed box, meaning that you can take this root note and then you can move that up to a B minor 11.
Totally, a movable shape.
Right, or G minor 11. So once you get this form down, your second finger is going to be the root note, and so now you'll be able to essentially play and the entire fretboard of minor 11s.
Yeah.
And you can do that with also the minor 9, which in this chord is the 6th string is X, and then we've got 12, 10, right? And then string 3, we're at 12, and then we're at 12 on 2. And again, another closed position.
Gorgeous sound.
And so, like, for instance, we could take a really super basic chord progression, like let's say we had G to an E minor to a C to an A minor, and then if we even wanted to just change up one of those chords, pick a chord of those 4 chords.
Let's change the A minor.
All right, so what we do is,
Ooh, so nice.
so I did it out of key. I mean, out of chord, because I swapped the chords around.
That's all good.
So, but yeah, so just again, we're trying to just focus on something that's really simple that we can utilize just to break out. So the next time
flavor.
you see a D, think about, okay, can I play a D major 7?
Yeah.
Or if you're in the second position, which means the root is on the A string. You've got that pattern, which is 5, 7, 6, 7, 5. And again, closed position. So you've got C major 7, D major 7, E major 7, F major 7. So just by learning those 3 shapes 4 shapes actually, the major 7 with the root note on the 6th string, then the major 7 with the root note on the 5th string, and then you've got the minor 11s and then the minor 9s. You've just expanded your chord vocabulary tremendously.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to put those chord shapes down below in the description, so that you guys can maybe download those chord shapes. I'll make a little PDF of that.
Killer.
Expand your vocabulary.
Yeah, so that's just one little aspect.
Yeah.
But just to keep everything succinct, let's go into breaking out of the pentatonic box.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you want to talk a little bit first, or I'll jump in?
No, please go right ahead.
Okay, so I grew up playing the classic caged shapes, as well as kind of the 5 pentatonic box shapes, right? So each of these cross 6 strings, right? Five shapes, and they'll repeat, right? So I got back to the first one up there. And those are amazing. They really are good and helpful. And if you don't know those, I highly recommend you check those out. I'll post those below in the description as well. But one thing that really changed the game for me was that I realized that boxes were not like the most musical thing. Like when you check out the great masters, they don't just stay in the box. They play around the box a lot, and they do use the box, but they slip and slide around it quite a bit. So I ended up developing this whole kind of methodology based on what I call the diagonal pentatonic. And I originally stole like a very small snippet of the idea from Marty Schwartz. I started teaching it, where he taught the A minor pentatonic scale just like across the fretboard like this. Now there was no method to it besides that he was like, hey, here's the A minor pentatonic. And I started teaching it, and I started realizing, oh, well, there's a lot more there than just like a shape, right?
Correct.
And so the thing that I realized after teaching it a bunch was that we have 2 little ingredients, and they'll allow us to play the scale shape across the entire fretboard anywhere we want, as long as you know where the root note is. And essentially, the first little ingredient is what I called a 2-note set. 2 notes separated by a whole step. Okay, so in this case, it's the 3rd fret and the 5th fret. And it happens to be that this little 2-note set, your ring finger is going to be your root. Right, so we have 2 notes right there. And always on the next string, we're going to have 3 notes separated by a whole step. So we have, in this case, it'll be C, D, E. So essentially, we have this neat little pattern of 2, 3. And that builds us a minor pentatonic scale. And I call it a 2-3 pattern, right? Now, the coolest part about that is we'll have our 2, our 3. Next door again, we got a 2, right? And then a 3. And then the only thing that will always mess us up, and if you're exploring the fretboard, you know this already, the B string always we have to compensate for that. So we have to push up the shape 1 fret
Right.
towards the body of the guitar. We got 2 notes again, and then 3. Now you might say, well, that's still kind of like a box, isn't it? It's still a shape. Well, yes. Right away for me, it's a whole lot more melodic if I play like that. But then the thing that I realized was that, oh, if I know where the root note is, and again, the kind of funny thing, I put my ring finger on that note, and I start that 2-3 pattern, I can do it anywhere on the fretboard. So an obvious place would be an octave above, right? So I have this little area. But then even better, I could go to the A string 12th fret and have a 2-note set, 3, 2, watch out for the B string, 3, and 2. Now with that little bit of information, the alternating 2s and 3s, I literally can play the entire fretboard.
Cool. Would you mind if I just kind of vamped on that minor 11 and then had you play over
Sure,
that, demonstrating
yeah.
that?
Yeah, that sounds great.
And then, so are you going to be essentially, the pentatonic is 5 notes, hence the name pentatonic. Are you going to mainly be keeping it within that 5-note bracket, or are you going to be adding anything else?
I won't add anything at all except, and we kind of talked about this, once you know where the pentatonic scale is, you can slide, like, kind of add passing tones, just like a half step below.
Right.
Sometimes a half step above, a half step below kind of tends to sound a little better to me.
Yeah, that momentum when it's flat going up is really compelling.
People say like they want to talk badly about scales, but like the scales are the correct notes. If I say so play the A minor chord for me. These are the notes that are in the scale, right? Okay, the notes that are not in the scale are these ones. So what's wrong with the scale? Because it guides me to play the notes. So I'm not saying that you can't use other notes or you can't add some cool other flavor, but like the notes of the scale are incredibly safe and still sound very musical and can be made to like kind of go any direction you want, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, so
yeah, I'll kind of talk and go through it.
And just to kind of put another thought on this, you've got a course called the Diagonal Pentatonic Course.
Yeah.
And is this essentially what is the framework of that?
This is the very bare bones beginning, and then it goes into the major pentatonic.
Okay.
And it talks also about how you shift on one string in any of those, either major or minor pentatonic, shift up and down so you don't get stuck in any of the little boxes or shapes. You end up being able to play across the entire fretboard. And then I also have about 85 exercises on how to like learn it really well. And then I also have backing tracks and then like how to make it musical. I just added to the course recently.
Excellent.
And talking about just how to bring more music to it, because people talk about, oh, well, it sounds like scales. Well, it sounds like scales because you're just playing the scales rather than making music with the scales.
Correct. Yeah. So I just think it's very interesting to realize that if someone's here and they adapt or take away something from this and maybe elevate their playing, that's fantastic. That's our goal. But there's so much left to build on. Hence the 85 examples, and then an entire course about this. So
yeah, totally.
You can really go as deep as you want with this. And so I'm looking forward to hearing you. So
yeah, to be honest, this changed the game for me.
Okay.
This concept, knowing the pentatonic in this way, made me sound so much more like I was playing music rather than scales.
And would you say that was noticeable to your bandmates as well?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there was a game changer. I remember I was touring in this band called the Deluge, and we were based out of Winston-Salem. And it was like I was starting, in the last episode we talked about the experience of going to play with people at open mics and stuff. And if you guys haven't checked that out, you should. But I was getting to play, 3 or 4 gigs a week with these guys. And so I was getting to try a lot of things. And I was teaching all day. I'd teach 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours and then go play a gig with these cats or play a local gig or whatever. And I was getting to implement these things. And it really did change the game. That was the period of time where I started to learn how to mix major and minor pentatonics together, and
Sure.
like, oh, it's a dominant 7 chord. I should be going for this sound. Oh, wait, that sound works too. Oh, how do I blend them together?
Exactly.
It was a pivotal time for me.
That's really cool. All right, so
Yeah.
maybe let's go and
Yeah,
see what
sure.
happens. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
So I use this high A here. Whenever I come back to a 2, I know my roots right here. Here's one of those exercises.
Great. That's something killer.
It's fun. So one thing I did cheat a little bit, and this is the challenge of when you're actually trying to play with a friend to hold back as a teacher. I did play the blue note.
And you played it when I actually played a passing chord in my chord. So you picked up on that immediately and you went along with it, which is super cool.
Yeah, because, that's our job as musicians, is to pay attention to the friends that we're playing with and making music with.
Yeah.
But one quick thing that I'll mention about that is that the cool thing with the diagonal that doesn't work with the box is that the box, like the blue note, is in 2 different places. And then in the diagonal, so if you're thinking about the 2-note set and the 3-note set, the blue note is always between the higher 2 notes of the 3-note set. So basically I have my 2-note set, then I have my 3-note set. It's always between these 2. It's right there. So I can go. And that's always the case. Right there.
And for those who maybe just have recently picked up the guitar, a blue note is a term for a note that is either a sharp 4 or a flat 5 from the roots.
Yeah, and this is a very incredibly common in a bluesy kind of minor pentatonic sound.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's awesome. So if people are interested in that and want to learn more, please check out the Diagonal Pentatonic course.
Yeah, and I'll do a discount for our subscribers. You can just type in the code Guitar Lab or click the link below, and I'll do 40% off of that course. And, of course, you're always welcome to reach out to us with any questions that you hear in this podcast or on YouTube.
Awesome. So you wanted to also talk about rhythm. And
Yeah.
I've always been a big fan of great rhythm sections, and I'm always one to practice rhythm. So break it down for me, Daniel.
Yeah, so what I noticed over the years was that people kind of struggled, my guitar students, myself, struggled with rhythm. And I wanted to figure out ways to do it, to help them work on it. Because I even had teachers who were like, rhythm, it's kind of hard to describe. It's kind of hard to critique. It's this kind of, it's in the air, right? It's like, where is it, right? And so you can't really see it, so it's hard to describe. So what I started to do with a lot of my students was force constraints exercises.
Okay.
Now, one thing I want to mention, because I think this is incredibly important. I am an improviser. That's what I care about. I have to play parts sometimes that are prearranged, like if I'm playing the melody of a song or if I'm playing a riff or whatever. But generally, I live to improvise.
Okay.
That's what I like to do. I like music on the spot. That's what I want to do. So when I'm getting, my thing happening, it's going to be based around improvisation. It might be funk. It might be blues. It might be jazz. It might be country.
Okay.
So what I realized that kind of partly inspired this was that you can practice learning how to feel time on prearranged things a lot easier than you can when you're improvising.
Correct.
And so I realized that in myself, where I would be working on my time with something that was preconceived, where I was playing something verbatim or whatever, and then I would go to improvise and my time would sound bad. So I realized, and this is like kind of throughout my methodology of like teaching and stuff, but like I work a lot improvising, but not just noodling around. Every time I work in the practice room on improvising, I choose specifics. So let's take this A minor pentatonic scale. So instead of me practicing this scale up and down, number one, that's going to lead to sounding scaly, so we don't want that. But also, if I'm doing that and I'm doing it in different rhythms or whatever, but I'm just playing from the bottom to the top and back, I'm just doing verbatim things.
Yes.
So when I go to improvise, that is not going to help me. I mean, it probably will, like maybe 5%, but it's really not going to help me. And this is the way that most of the early teachers that I worked with told me how to practice.
Right.
And they were incredible players, but they weren't good improvisers.
Right.
They could play really incredible Bach and stuff like that, but they didn't know about improvisation. So the thing that led me into this was like, okay, cool, my rhythm's bad. How do I work on that? And so one of the big things was taking either a drum beat or a backing track or something like that and playing along, but forcing myself to play specific rhythms.
Okay.
So I'll just use a basic drum beat. This is like 97 beats per minute. All right.
It's finally happened.
Okay, so we have a drum beat going, all right? And so, a lot of times what we would do as guitar players is play the scale straight up and down. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to force myself to improvise, but in the context of the groove, okay? And I'm going to start off really easy, and I do this with my students a lot, right? So we have a beat that's at 97 beats per minute. It's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So I'm only allowed to play quarter notes. That's where I'm going to start. And not only just quarter notes, but 4 times every note that I choose.
Okay.
Now, for me, rhythm, when I play on the beat, which is a quarter note, I will play only downstrokes. So it'll go like this. Notice I'm not playing the scale in order. I'm trying to make music, but I have rules. And I'm trying to really dial myself into the groove. Now you'll notice I do grace notes, like slides, hammer-ons, and pull-offs, because I know that my left hand is a lot of times the culprit of my bad rhythm. I'll go to 2 times each. Still only quarter notes. 1 time. Trying to think ahead and make sure I'm in the groove. I'm going to 8th notes. Notice that I went to alternate picking now. And I'm playing 4 times each again. Whenever I go to a new rhythm, I start over. Two times. As I feel more and more comfortable with the scale, I try to make bigger jumps so that I can stay in time. I'll go to 1 time. Now with students, a lot of times this starts to be pretty fast. And so I'll start with them. A lot of times I'll just have them play on 1 and then have 3 beats of rest. So it might be like 1 and rest, 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 1 and rest, then 1 and 2 and rest, 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 rest. 3 beats. 1 and 2 and 3 and rest. Now, if they're feeling comfortable and they can go faster, I'll go with the straight, just 8th notes the whole time. Okay, so I'm playing 1 time at 8th notes. I'm going to go to triplets next in 3s. 2, 3, 4. And as the repetitions are happening, I'm trying to like be really in the groove. We'll go to one time. This will be really fast, so this will be another one that I would have them go like triplet, rest, 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 triplet, rest, 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 triplet, triplet. I'll go ahead to the back-to-back. I try to play little melodies, but part of the thing is forcing my brain, as I'm talking it's hard, but forcing my brain to keep playing so that I have stamina and I can be thinking ahead.
Yeah.
I'll go to sixteenths now with fours. Go to twos. And ones. Ah, bad. So then at this point, I'll really challenge myself by starting to push the metronome up. Mm-hmm. And depending upon the student, I teach a lot of different people at a lot of different levels. We'll try to push into 130, 140, 150, 160 with sixteenths like that.
That's booking.
Yeah, totally. And that's like, when I have to play with Jonathan Green, that's the exercise that I do.
Oh, for sure.
That's our friend who's an incredible drummer.
Incredible.
Just mind-bogglingly good, and he just pushes me to my limits all the time. And like I have to have that extra 30% or I will eat it.
Yeah, for sure. Some people in life just bring out the best in you in different aspects, and
he also brings out the worst, though.
No, dude's awesome. Every time I've only played with him just a handful of times, and it was amazing.
I got to play with him starting in 2014 for at least a gig a week, for 4 years, and then I still hire him a lot, and we play together on some bands that we play in, and it's amazing to see his progress because it's just like it sounds and feels so good, everything he does.
Yeah.
I just like look back and I'm like, yes, that.
Yeah. I will tell, I know this is Guitar Lab podcast, not Drum Lab or the Jonathan Green podcast, but I will tell you who made the introduction to myself and Jonathan. It was Jeff Sipe.
Oh, cool.
So Jeff was up here, and I've known Jeff for a while, and I said, hey, I'm looking to get back and just playing, and I'm in Winston, though. And he says, I got the guy for you. I'm like, really? I'm like, yeah, his name is Jonathan. He took a couple lessons, and he's ridiculous. I said, wow. He says, I'm going to say something, and I completely mean it. And I'm like, okay. He says, he is the Jonathan Coltrane of drums. And I was like, he's too good for me. And he's like, no, not like that. And so I called him and we talked, and then I ended up meeting with a ridiculous bass player friend of mine, Jordan, and we got together and played some tunes, and it was incredible.
That's so fun. Yeah.
So one of the things that I was going to mention, because you went from super basic to pretty intense. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I used to teach my students and also practice myself is, especially when you're dealing with rhythms and something that you might not have a lot of, like triplets can be hard for people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And instead of working on left and right hands and the syncopation together, I would just focus on the right hands.
Man, right hand alone. You hear that, people? Right hand alone. Yeah, I can't tell you how many hours I spent just right-handed.
So I would do either metronome or most likely a drum beat, because it's a little bit more animated.
Yeah.
And you can tend to sag or push a little bit easier with a drum beat. And I would just focus on exactly what you did, starting out with the quarter note, and the eighth note triplets, 16th notes, and then 16th note triplets, and then 32nd notes. And like, you can just go and go and go. And to me, getting that right hand down, you can really focus on it. At least I could literally just right there, and I would know like, oh, I'm just a hair bit off,
Totally.
And then get it, and I would used to practice like 8, 9, 10 minutes, just right hand, and then incorporate the left hand with that.
Yeah.
And that synergy really worked for me. So I always like to break things apart and then put them back together.
Totally.
And I've done that with a lot of things that I was too was a little bit too much to get at once. You know, just break it and build that up. But I think that's an awesome exercise.
Thanks,
and
man.
you sounded great, and I'm sure that everyone out there in the Guitar Lab podcast,
Guitar Lab.
will the audience will dig it. So, anything else?
Yeah, so I am working on this whole rhythmic boot camp course. So that'll be out sooner than later. Not to just plug my stuff, but I really do think that as a guitar player, like when I got my time together, that's when I really started sounding good. It was like for me, it's like tone, touch, and time.
Yep.
You know, the 3 T's.
Right.
That's such a game changer. You know.
Right. And one thing that you did and even made mention of is you're playing and then also speaking. That's one of the things that I used to ask my students to do, where I would send them home with X, Y, and Z to work on, and then a goal tempo. And when they came back and be like, all right, you ready? And like, yeah, you know, and then they'd play it. And I was like, okay, now recite the alphabet while you do that. Or read something.
Yeah.
You know, like I would put up, you know, some T.S. Eliot poem or not just anything, you know, and then, you know. And so then that was, my more advanced students began to kind of anticipate that.
Totally.
Like they would play it and they're like, you want me to read too? I'm like, yeah, let's read, you know. And they're just wailing, you know. It's like Sally sold seashells by the seashore, you know.
That's awesome.
So because that was obviously very hard and you did a great job.
Thanks.
So,
Yeah, Adam Neely talks about that. He talks about actually counting out loud and not counting what you're playing, but counting just the big beats. And that's one thing that I've tried to push my students and myself to do when doing that. And being able to count the big beats, but play something else.
Yeah.
And in that version, I skipped over all the odds because it's really fun to do 3s as quarter notes, 3s as eighth notes, 2s as triplets, and 3s as 16ths. But if you're just getting into this, the ones that I went over would be good. And if it's too fast for you, you know, remember there are all kinds of tools to slow things down.
Right. And then in a later podcast, we can talk about, you know, playing on the downbeat versus playing on the upbeat.
Totally.
You know, because that totally changes it. You know, like I think of like Police Walking on the Moon. You know, there's those upbeats that just really just make that song stand out.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for checking out the official, the first of our name now.
Yes, now Guitar Lab episode 3 officially.
Yeah. Now we got to get a logo.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we need some lab coats.
Oh my gosh, we can go with this. Yeah, if you guys have like ideas for us, or if there are any talented, you know, graphic designers out there in the audience.
Yeah, we're not asking for anything for free.
Yeah,
You know,
we're happy to pay.
But check out Daniel's course. Check out his website, all the stuff he's got in that. And thank you all again. We really do appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment, and we will see you next episode.
Awesome. Take care.